The stagecoach lurched to a violent stop outside the weathered trading post, and Adelaide Garrison stumbled onto the dusty Oregon Trail with nothing but a carpetbag, $17, and bruises hidden beneath her high-necked traveling dress that told stories she refused to speak aloud. It was late spring of 1852, and Oregon City bustled with transplants from the east seeking new beginnings in the fertile Willamette Valley. Adelaide had traveled 2,000 miles to escape a marriage that nearly killed her, leaving Boston society scandalized and her family shamed. She was 22 years old and had learned that respectability meant nothing when a man closed the door behind him and showed his true nature. Her husband, Preston Whitmore Roman III, had been everything a proper Boston lady could want on paper: wealthy, educated, from an established family. Behind closed doors, he had been a monster who left marks where her clothing would hide them. The driver tossed her trunk down with little ceremony, and Adelaide caught it before it hit the mud. She had gotten stronger during the journey west, had learned to rely on herself when no one else would help. The other passengers had kept their distance once they learned she was a woman traveling alone, fleeing a marriage. Scandal followed her like a shadow. Oregon City sprawled before her, rough and unfinished compared to Boston's refined streets. Buildings stood in various states of construction, and the road was more mud than cobblestone. Men in dusty work clothes outnumbered women 5 to 1, and everyone moved with purpose. This was a place where people came to build something new, to carve out lives from the wilderness. Adelaide squared her shoulders and lifted her trunk. The proprietor of the rooming house had promised her a position as a seamstress in his wife's shop, a job she had secured through correspondence. It was not much, but it was honest work and independence. She would never rely on a man for her survival again. "Madam, you should not be carrying that yourself." The voice came from behind her, deep and concerned. Adelaide whirled around, instinctively stepping back, her hands coming up defensively. The man who had spoken stopped immediately, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I apologize. I did not mean to startle you." His voice was gentler now, and his eyes held genuine worry. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that needed cutting. He wore the practical clothing of a working man: sturdy pants, a worn cotton shirt, scuffed boots, and a hat that had seen better days. Everything about him spoke of hard work and outdoor life. "I only meant to offer assistance." Adelaide's heart hammered against her ribs. She forced herself to breathe slowly, to assess rather than panic. This man kept his distance, had stopped the moment she showed fear. His hands remained visible, his posture non-threatening. "I can manage, thank you." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "I am certain you can, madam, but that trunk looks heavy, and you have had a long journey. My name is Samuel Garrett. I run a horse ranch about 3 miles outside town. I come into Oregon City once a week for supplies, and I would be glad to help you carry your belongings wherever you are heading." Adelaide studied him carefully. Samuel Garrett did not have the polished appearance of Boston gentlemen. His hands bore calluses and old scars from honest labor. His face was open, free of the calculated charm that Preston had wielded like a weapon. When he met her eyes, he did not try to dominate or intimidate. He simply waited, patient and kind. "The Morrison rooming house," she said finally. "On 3rd Street. I know it well, Mrs. Morrison runs a respectable establishment." Samuel moved forward slowly, telegraphing his intentions. He lifted her trunk as though it weighed nothing. "If you will walk beside me, I will carry this for you." They walked through Oregon City's muddy streets in silence. Adelaide remained tense, ready to run if necessary, but Samuel made no move that could be interpreted as threatening. He nodded to people they passed, clearly well known in the community. Several shopkeepers called out greetings, and he responded warmly but kept moving, respecting that Adelaide had a destination. "You are new to Oregon City," he said after a while. It was not quite a question. "I arrived just now on the stage. From back east, judging by your accent. Boston." Adelaide offered nothing more. Samuel nodded, accepting her reticence. Oregon Territory is different from Boston. More opportunities for people who want to build something new. Less concern about where folks came from, more interest in who they are now. Adelaide glanced at him sharply, wondering if he had somehow intuited her circumstances. But his expression remained neutral, his eyes forward. They reached the Morrison rooming house, a two-story structure that looked sturdy and well-maintained. Samuel set her trunk on the covered porch and stepped back immediately, giving her space. "Thank you for your help, Mr. Garrett." Adelaide's voice was formal, dismissive. "You are welcome, Mrs. Garrison." She used her married name deliberately, a shield against unwanted attention. Something flickered in Samuel's eyes, but he simply touched the brim of his hat. "Mrs. Garrison, I hope you find Oregon City welcoming." He turned to leave, and Adelaide felt an unexpected pang. This man had been nothing but courteous, had respected her boundaries without question. Preston would have demanded gratitude, would have used any small kindness as leverage for control. "Mr. Garrett." The words escaped before she could stop them. He turned back, patient and attentive. "I apologize for my abruptness. The journey was difficult and I am tired." Samuel's expression softened. "No apology necessary, madam. Traveling the Oregon Trail takes strength. You have every right to be cautious in a new place." He paused, then added, "If you need anything, if you find yourself in difficulty, the Garrett Ranch is 3 miles northwest on the old Fur Trapper Road. Anyone in town can give you directions. I mean that sincerely." Before Adelaide could respond, he walked away, his long stride carrying him toward the general store. She watched him go, feeling off balance. She had expected demands, expectations, the subtle manipulation that men used to establish control. Instead, Samuel Garrett had offered help and asked nothing in return. "You must be Adelaide Garrison." Adelaide turned to find a plump woman in her 50s standing in the doorway. She had kind eyes and flour on her apron. "Mrs. Morrison, the very same. Come inside, dear. You look exhausted." Mrs. Morrison bustled forward and picked up Adelaide's carpetbag. "I have your room ready, and there is stew on the stove. You can start in the sewing shop tomorrow after you have rested." The rooming house interior was simple but clean, with whitewashed walls and practical furniture. Mrs. Morrison led Adelaide upstairs to a small room with a bed, a washstand, and a window overlooking the street. It was sparse, but it was hers. Adelaide felt emotion tighten her throat. "This is perfect, thank you. You are very welcome, dear Mrs. Morrison set down the carpetbag and studied Adelaide with perceptive eyes. "I do not pry into my boarders' pasts. Whatever brought you to Oregon City is your business. But I will tell you this, you are safe here. My husband, Thomas, keeps good order in this house, and the community looks after its own." Adelaide nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "I saw Samuel Garrett helping you with your trunk. That is a good man right there." Mrs. Morrison's voice held approval. "He has the largest horse ranch in the valley, built it himself from nothing. Works harder than any 3 men combined. And before you worry, he is not the type to bother women. Respectful to a fault, that one." He seemed kind. Adelaide's voice was carefully neutral. "Kind does not begin to cover it." Mrs. Morrison moved toward the door. 3 years back, a family came through on their way to California. The husband died of fever, left his wife with 4 children and no resources. Samuel gave them his own cabin to live in, built himself a smaller place, and employed the widow as his housekeeper. Paid her twice what the job warranted until she remarried to a merchant in town. He has done things like that more times than I can count. After Mrs. Morrison left, Adelaide sat on the bed and let herself cry for the first time since leaving Boston. She cried for the girl she had been, who believed in fairy tales and happy endings. She cried for the woman she had become, who flinched at shadows and trusted no one. And she cried with something that might have been hope, because perhaps in Oregon territory, far from Boston's judgmental eyes, she could build a life that belonged only to herself. The next morning, Adelaide reported to Mrs. Morrison's sewing shop, a small storefront attached to the rooming house. The work was straightforward, mending torn work clothes, altering garments, occasionally sewing new pieces for customers who could afford them. Adelaide had always been skilled with a needle, and she lost herself in the familiar rhythm of stitching. Other customers came and went throughout the day. Adelaide kept her head down, speaking only when necessary. She noticed the curious glances, heard the whispered speculation. A woman traveling alone from Boston was unusual enough to inspire gossip. At midday, the shop door opened, and Samuel Garrett entered carrying a bundle of clothing. Adelaide's hands stilled on her work. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Morrison." Samuel's voice carried from the front of the shop. "I have some shirts that need mending if you have time." "Samuel Garrett, you work those shirts to death." Mrs. Morrison's tone was affectionately scolding. "I will have my new seamstress look at them." "Adelaide, dear, can you assess Mr. Garrett's mending?" Adelaide had no choice but to step forward. Samuel's expression showed surprise at seeing her, followed by a warm smile that did not quite reach the practiced charm of Boston society. It seemed genuine, unguarded. "Mrs. Garrison, I did not expect to see you working so soon after your arrival. I prefer to keep busy, Mr. Garrett." Adelaide took the bundle of shirts and began examining them. The fabric was worn but clean, and the tears came from hard use rather than neglect. "These will take a day or two to mend properly." "I appreciate your time." Samuel pulled coins from his pocket. "Whatever the cost, Mrs. Morrison knows I pay fairly." "Samuel always pays double what I ask," Mrs. Morrison said from her corner. "Says it is only right to compensate skilled labor properly." Adelaide glanced up sharply. Preston had complained constantly about costs, had controlled every penny Adelaide spent, and demanded accounting for household expenses down to the smallest detail. The contrast was jarring. "Mrs. Morrison charges fair prices," Samuel said easily. "But good work deserves good pay. The people who built Oregon territory with their labor should not struggle to survive." He meant it, Adelaide realized. There was no performance in his words, no attempt to impress. He simply believed in fair treatment. "I will have these ready by Thursday," Adelaide said, retreating to professional distance. "Thursday is perfect, I thank you." Samuel touched his hat brim. "Mrs. Morrison, good day. Mrs. Garrison, I hope Oregon City is treating you well." After he left, Mrs. Morrison chuckled. "That man has no idea how much the unmarried women in this town wish he would pay them attention. But Samuel Garrett is oblivious, too focused on his horses and his work." Adelaide bent over her sewing, unwilling to engage in gossip. But she found herself thinking about Samuel Garrett more than she wanted to admit. Thursday arrived, and Adelaide had the mended shirts wrapped and ready. She told herself her care in making the repairs nearly invisible was simply professional pride. It had nothing to do with wanting to prove her skill to Samuel Garrett. He arrived at midday again, and this time he came directly to Adelaide's work table. "Mrs. Garrison, I hope the mending was not too difficult." "Not at all, Mr. Garrett. Your shirts are here." Adelaide handed him the wrapped bundle, carefully avoiding touching his hands in the exchange. Samuel unwrapped one shirt and examined her work closely. His eyebrows rose. "This is exceptional. I cannot even see where the tears were. That is the goal of good mending." "You have considerable skill." Samuel rewrapped the shirt carefully. "Mrs. Morrison, please add $1 to the usual cost. This quality deserves it." "That is not necessary," Adelaide said quickly. The amount he was paying was already generous. "I insist. Your expertise saved these shirts." "That has value." Samuel's tone was gentle but firm. He paid Mrs. Morrison, then turned back to Adelaide. "Mrs. Garrison, I have a question to ask you, and please feel free to refuse. I have no wish to make you uncomfortable." Adelaide tensed immediately. Here it came, the expectation, the demand for something in return. Samuel must have seen her reaction because he took a step back, his hands visible and non-threatening. "I only wanted to ask if you would consider taking on a special project. I have fabric that belonged to my mother, fine quality, and I hope to have a dress made for my youngest sister. She is getting married in July, and I wanted to give her something special. But if you are too busy or prefer not to take private commissions, I understand completely." The request was so unexpected that Adelaide simply stared at him. Not an improper suggestion, not a demand for her time or attention, just a brother wanting to give his sister a wedding gift. I could do that, Mr. Garrett." Samuel's face lit up with relief and pleasure. "Truly. That would mean a great deal to me. My sister Catherine is 19, and she is marrying a good man who is homesteading near Salem. I want her to have something fine for her wedding." The genuine affection in his voice when he spoke of his sister touched something in Adelaide's chest. Preston had never spoken of anyone with such warmth. "I would need to take her measurements," Adelaide said, "and see the fabric to determine the best design." "Of course. Catherine lives in town with our aunt. I could bring her by tomorrow if that suits you." Samuel's eagerness was endearing. "And I will pay for your time and expertise, naturally." They arranged the details, and Samuel left with his mended shirts, thanking Adelaide 3 more times. Mrs. Morrison watched the exchange with knowing eyes. "That man," she said after Samuel departed, "is the kind of good that is rare in this world. His father died when Samuel was 16, and he raised his 3 younger siblings while building that ranch from nothing. Worked himself half to death to keep them fed and safe. Now they are all grown, but he still watches over them like they are children." Adelaide absorbed this information silently. Everything she learned about Samuel Garrett contradicted what she thought she knew about men. Preston had been charming and attentive during their courtship, had presented himself as protective and devoted. The truth had revealed itself only after the wedding, when Adelaide belonged to him legally and had no escape. She would not be fooled again. Kindness could be a mask. She would keep her distance, do the work Samuel requested, and maintain professional boundaries. Nothing more. But the next day, when Samuel arrived with his sister Catherine, Adelaide found her resolve wavering. Catherine Garrett was a bright-eyed young woman with her brother's open smile and genuine warmth. She was clearly excited about her wedding and overwhelmed by Samuel's generosity. "Samuel, this is too much," Catherine protested, even as she ran her fingers reverently over the beautiful blue silk he had brought. "This fabric must have cost a fortune. It was Mother's, and she would want you to have it." Samuel's voice was tender. "You deserve something special for your wedding, Kat. Let me do this for you." Catherine hugged her brother fiercely. "You have already done so much. You gave up everything to raise us." "I gave up nothing that mattered." Samuel hugged her back, then gently disentangled himself. "Now let Mrs. Garrison take your measurements so she can create something beautiful." Adelaide worked carefully, noting Catherine's measurements and discussing design options. The younger woman had simple tastes and kept insisting nothing too elaborate was necessary, but Adelaide could see possibilities in the fine silk. She found herself wanting to create something truly special. "I will sketch some designs for your approval," Adelaide told Catherine. "The fabric is too beautiful to waste on anything ordinary." "Whatever you think best," Catherine said, her eyes shining. "I trust your judgment, Mrs. Garrison." After they left, Adelaide sat at her work table with the blue silk spread before her. Her hands trembled slightly as she touched the fine fabric. Preston had controlled everything Adelaide wore, dictating colors and styles that pleased him. He had treated her like a doll to be dressed according to his preferences. The idea of creating something beautiful, of using her skills to bring joy rather than satisfy demands, felt both foreign and wonderful. She worked on the sketches that evening in her room, refining the design until it felt right. The dress would be simple but elegant, with clean lines that would flatter Catherine's figure. Adelaide had learned to sew as a young girl, had always found peace in the craft. Preston had forbidden her from sewing after their marriage, saying it was beneath a woman of her station. He had taken even that small joy from her. Over the following weeks, Adelaide worked on Catherine's dress whenever she had free time. Catherine came by regularly for fittings, always cheerful and kind. She talked about her fiancé, Thomas, with such open affection that Adelaide felt envious. Catherine had found the kind of love that Adelaide once believed existed. Equal, respectful, joyful. Samuel often accompanied his sister to the fittings, waiting patiently in the shop's front room. He never intruded, but was always ready with encouragement and interest when Catherine wanted to show him progress. Adelaide found herself looking forward to these visits more than she should. Samuel's presence was calming, his steady kindness a balm to wounds she carried. One afternoon in early June, Catherine could not make her fitting due to illness. Samuel arrived alone, apologetic and concerned. "Cat has a terrible cold, but she did not want to cancel without notice," he explained. "She asked me to tell you she will be well enough for the next fitting." "That is no problem, Mr. Garrett. I hope she recovers quickly." Adelaide set aside her work. "The dress is progressing well." "May I see?" Samuel asked. "Or is it improper for the brother to view the dress before completion?" Adelaide smiled despite herself. "I think we can make an exception." She brought out the partially completed dress, and Samuel's expression transformed into wonder. "Mrs. Garrison, this is extraordinary. Catherine will be overwhelmed. The fabric is beautiful. It makes the work easy." "The fabric is just material. You are the artist bringing it to life." Samuel met her eyes directly. "You have remarkable talent." Adelaide felt heat rise in her cheeks. She was not accustomed to genuine compliments. Preston had occasionally praised her appearance, but only when it reflected well on him. This felt different, respectful recognition of her skill. "Thank you, Mr. Garrett." "Samuel, please. Mr. Garrett makes me feel ancient." His smile was warm. "And might I call you Adelaide, if that is not too forward?" Adelaide hesitated. The use of given names implied friendship, familiarity she was not certain she should allow. But Samuel waited patiently, making it clear the choice was entirely hers. "Adelaide is acceptable," she said finally. "I am honored." Samuel's sincerity was evident. "Adelaide, I wanted to ask if you might be willing to accompany me on a brief excursion. Please, let me explain before you respond." Adelaide's muscles tensed automatically, but Samuel continued quickly, his tone respectful and clear. "My ranch is 3 miles from town, and I have a mare there who is expecting a foal any day. I thought you might enjoy seeing the ranch and meeting the horses. Catherine and our Aunt Millicent would accompany us, of course. It would be entirely proper, and you would be under no obligation whatsoever." I simply thought you might like a break from town and an afternoon in the countryside." The invitation was carefully worded to remove any impropriety, and the inclusion of his family made it clear this was not a romantic proposition. Adelaide's immediate instinct was to refuse, to maintain her distance. But something in her wanted to see the ranch Samuel had built, to understand more about this man who confused and intrigued her. "I would need to ask Mrs. Morrison if I could take an afternoon away from the shop." "Of course. Sunday perhaps. The shop is closed and you would not lose any work time." Samuel's expression was hopeful but not pressuring. "I promise you would be entirely safe." The last sentence was said quietly, with understanding that made Adelaide realize Samuel had intuited some of her history. She should have been alarmed, but instead she felt seen, acknowledged. Sunday afternoon would be acceptable. Samuel's smile was like sunrise. "Wonderful. I will arrange everything. We will call for you at 1 o'clock. After he left, Adelaide sat in the quiet shop and wondered what she was doing. She had sworn to keep her distance, to trust no one. Yet here she was, agreeing to spend an afternoon at Samuel Garrett's ranch. She told herself it was simply a cordial outing with appropriate chaperones. It meant nothing, but in her heart, she knew she was lying to herself. Sunday arrived with clear skies and warm sunshine. Adelaide dressed carefully in her second-best dress, a simple green cotton that Preston had never liked. She had always loved this dress, had felt like herself in it. Wearing it now felt like a small act of rebellion and reclamation. Samuel arrived at precisely 1 o'clock in a sturdy wagon, with Catherine and a refined older woman Adelaide assumed was Aunt Millicent. Samuel helped Adelaide into the wagon with careful courtesy, his hands respectful and brief in their support. The ride to the Garrett Ranch took them through beautiful Willamette Valley countryside. Fields of wildflowers bloomed in abundance, and the Cascade Mountains rose in the distance, still snow-capped. Adelaide found herself relaxing, lulled by the beauty in Catherine's cheerful conversation. Aunt Millicent was a perceptive woman in her 60s who clearly adored her nephew. "Samuel is too modest to tell you himself, but he has built something remarkable out here," she said. "When their father died, they had nothing but debt and a failing farm. Samuel transformed it into one of the finest horse ranches in Oregon Territory." "Aunt Millie, you are embarrassing me," Samuel protested mildly. "Truth is not embarrassment, dear boy." The Garrett Ranch appeared on the horizon, and Adelaide caught her breath. The property sprawled across Prime Valley land, with sturdy fences, well-maintained buildings, and horses grazing peacefully in expansive pastures. Everything spoke of hard work and careful stewardship. Samuel's home was a solid 2-story structure built from local timber. It was not grand, but it was well made and welcoming. He pulled the wagon up to the house and helped the women down. "I want to show you the horses first, if you are willing," Samuel said. "The pregnant mare is in the near barn." They walked to the barn, and Adelaide was struck by how clean and organized everything was. The horses were clearly well cared for, their coats gleaming with health. Samuel moved among them with easy familiarity, greeting each by name. "This is Juniper." Samuel stopped at a stall containing a beautiful chestnut mare with an obviously swollen belly. "She is expecting her first foal. The sire is my best stallion, and I have high hopes for the offspring." Adelaide approached the stall carefully. She had limited experience with horses, but Juniper seemed gentle. The mare nuzzled Samuel's hand affectionately. "Would you like to pet her?" Samuel asked. "I do not know much about horses." "That is fine. Juniper is patient with newcomers." Samuel opened the stall door and gestured for Adelaide to enter. "Just hold your hand out flat and let her sniff you. Then you can stroke her neck." Adelaide followed his instructions, and Juniper's soft nose investigated her palm before the mare allowed gentle petting. The horse's warmth and solid presence was comforting. "She is beautiful," Adelaide said softly. "She is indeed." Samuel stood beside Adelaide, his attention on the horse. "I raise horses because they are honest creatures. They respond to how you treat them, reflect back what you give them. Treat a horse with cruelty, and it becomes fearful or aggressive. Treat it with patience and kindness, and it becomes a partner." Adelaide understood he was not just talking about horses. She glanced at Samuel, found him watching her with gentle understanding. "That must be a rewarding way to live," she said quietly. "It is the only way I know to live." They stood together in the barn, the moments stretching between them, weighted with things unsaid. Catherine's voice calling from outside broke the spell, and they rejoined the others. Aunt Millicent had laid out a picnic lunch in the shade of a large oak tree near the house. The food was simple but delicious: fresh bread, cheese, cold chicken, and berry preserves. They ate while Catherine talked about her wedding plans, and Aunt Millicent shared stories about Samuel and his siblings growing up. "Samuel was always the responsible one," Aunt Millicent said fondly. "Even as a boy, he looked after the younger children and helped his father." When tragedy struck, Samuel stepped up without complaint. He was still a child himself, but he became the man of the family. "I did what anyone would do," Samuel said, clearly uncomfortable with the praise. "Not everyone would have done it so well, dear." Aunt Millicent patted his hand. "You gave up your own dreams to ensure your siblings had a future." "What dreams did you give up?" Adelaide asked before she could stop herself. Samuel looked surprised by the question. "I had thoughts of going to university, studying veterinary medicine. But when Father died, there were more pressing concerns. The family needed stability and income. The ranch provided both." "Do you regret it?" Adelaide asked. "No." Samuel's answer was immediate and firm. "I have a good life here. I work with animals I love, and I have the satisfaction of building something lasting. My siblings all had opportunities because of the ranch. Catherine is marrying a good man. My brother James has his own farm near Portland. My youngest brother Henry is studying law in San Francisco. They all got to pursue their dreams because the ranch gave them a foundation. That is enough for me." Adelaide saw then the depth of Samuel Garrett's character. He had sacrificed his own ambitions without bitterness, had found contentment in providing for others. She compared this to Preston, who had possessed every advantage and used them only to elevate himself at others' expense. The afternoon passed too quickly. Samuel showed Adelaide more of the ranch, explaining his breeding program and his hopes for the future. He spoke with passion about his work, and Adelaide found herself genuinely interested. She had never been allowed to care about such things before. Preston had expected her to concern herself only with household management and social obligations. As the sun began lowering, Samuel drove them back to town. Adelaide sat in the wagon bed with Catherine and Aunt Millicent, watching Samuel's steady hands on the reins. She felt something unfurling in her chest, something that might have been hope or might have been fear. Possibly it was both. At the rooming house, Samuel helped Adelaide down from the wagon. His hands were warm and careful, lingering only as long as necessary. "Thank you for joining us today," Samuel said. "I hope you enjoyed seeing the ranch." "I did, very much." Adelaide's voice was soft. "Thank you for inviting me. Perhaps you would be willing to visit again. Catherine enjoys your company and Aunt Millie has already declared you delightful." Samuel's eyes were hopeful. "I enjoy your company as well." Adelaide knew she should decline, should protect herself, but she found herself nodding. "I would like that." Samuel's smile could have lit the darkening sky. "Wonderful. I will speak with Mrs. Morrison about arranging another outing." That night, Adelaide lay in her narrow bed and allowed herself to think about Samuel Garrett. She catalogued every kind gesture, every respectful action, every moment of consideration. Part of her waited for the flaw, the crack in the facade that would reveal ulterior motives. But the evidence kept mounting in Samuel's favor, and Adelaide felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. It terrified her. Over the following weeks, Adelaide saw Samuel regularly. He invented reasons to visit the sewing shop. More mending, a request for curtains for the ranch house, orders for shirts for his ranch hands. Each visit was brief and proper, but Adelaide began to look forward to them. Samuel always asked about her day, seemed genuinely interested in her work and opinions. He treated her like a person whose thoughts mattered, not a possession to be managed. Catherine's dress was nearly complete, and the wedding approached rapidly. Samuel invited Adelaide to attend the ceremony, and she accepted. She told herself it was simply kindness toward a client, but she knew better. She wanted to be there, wanted to see Samuel's family celebrating, wanted to be part of something joyful. The wedding took place on a warm July afternoon in Oregon City's small church. Catherine looked radiant in the blue silk dress, and her groom Thomas gazed at her with transparent adoration. Adelaide watched from her pew, emotion thick in her throat. This was what marriage should be. Two people choosing each other freely, with love and respect. At the celebration afterward, Samuel found Adelaide standing apart from the crowd. "Thank you again for the dress," he said. Catherine cried when she first saw it completed. "You gave her something special. I was glad to do it. She is a lovely young woman. She is happy." Samuel's voice was tender as he watched his sister dance with her new husband. "That is all I ever wanted for any of them, happiness and the freedom to choose their own paths." "You gave them that," Adelaide said. "You should be proud." Samuel turned to her, his expression serious. "Adelaide, I need to tell you something, and I hope you will not think me too forward." Adelaide's heart began to pound. "What is it?" "I care for you deeply." Samuel's voice was steady, his eyes holding hers. "I know you have reasons to be cautious, and I will not press you for details, but I want you to know that my feelings are genuine. I would like the opportunity to court you properly, if you would allow it." Adelaide felt panic and longing war within her. She wanted to say yes, wanted to allow herself this possibility, but fear held her frozen. "Samuel, I cannot." She struggled for words. "My past is complicated. I am not what you think I am." "I think you are a strong, talented, remarkable woman who has survived something difficult," Samuel said gently. "That is all I need to know unless you choose to share more. I am married." The words burst out desperate. "Legally, I am still married. I fled my husband, left Boston without his permission. I have no right to be here, no right to feel what I am beginning to feel." Adelaide expected shock, rejection. Instead, Samuel's expression filled with compassion and something that might have been anger on her behalf. "Did your husband hurt you?" The quiet question undid her. Adelaide felt tears spill over. "Yes." "Then you had every right to leave, law or no law." Samuel's voice was fierce. "No vow gives a man the right to harm his wife. You did what you needed to do to survive." "The law does not see it that way. If Preston finds me, he can force me to return. I belong to him legally." "The law can be damned." Samuel took a careful step closer, his hands open and visible. "Adelaide, listen to me. You do not belong to anyone. You are your own person, with the right to choose your own life. If your husband comes here, he will find Oregon territory less sympathetic to Boston legal customs. We protect our own here. You do not understand. Preston is wealthy and connected. He could destroy me, could destroy anyone who helps me. Let him try." Samuel's certainty was absolute. Adelaide, I am not asking for anything from you right now except the chance to prove that not all men are like your husband. Let me show you what kindness looks like, what respect looks like. No expectations, no demands. Just time together if you are willing. Adelaide wanted to believe him so desperately it hurt. Why would you take such a risk? You barely know me. I know enough. I know you are brave and skilled and worthy of so much more than you received. I know I want the chance to earn your trust. Samuel's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I know that when I see you, something in me feels right for the first time in years. Please, Adelaide, stay here in Oregon City. Let me prove to you daily that a man can be kind. The words from Samuel's lips were so earnest, so full of hope and determination, that Adelaide felt her fear begin to crack. She had been running for months, looking over her shoulder, waiting for Preston to find her and drag her back. But here was Samuel, offering something she had believed impossible: safety, respect, the possibility of genuine affection. I am frightened, she whispered. I know. That is reasonable, but I will never give you reason to fear me. Samuel held her gaze. We can go as slowly as you need. I will follow your lead in all things. The moment you want me to step back, I will. No questions, no resentment. Adelaide took a shaking breath. This was a leap into unknown territory, a risk that could destroy her fragile equilibrium. But the alternative was to keep running, to never trust, to live in permanent fear. That was not living at all. All right, she said. We can spend time together, but slowly. I need to go slowly. Samuel's smile was tender and triumphant. Slowly is perfect. We have all the time in the world. They began courting carefully over the following weeks. Samuel visited Adelaide at the shop regularly, always bringing small gifts. Wildflowers, a book he thought she might enjoy, fresh fruit from his ranch. He invited her on outings, always properly chaperoned by Aunt Millicent or one of his friends. They took walks through Oregon City, attended church socials, sat by the river and talked for hours. Adelaide learned about Samuel's life in detail. He told her about his father's death, about the struggle to keep the family together, about building the ranch through back-breaking work and determination. He spoke of his siblings with deep affection, of his hopes for the future. He asked Adelaide about her life, but never pressed when she hesitated. He accepted what she chose to share and did not demand more. Slowly, carefully, Adelaide began to share pieces of her story. She told Samuel about her childhood in Boston, about her mother's death when Adelaide was 15, about her father's pressure to marry well. She described Preston's courtship, how charming and attentive he had been, how thoroughly he had fooled everyone, including Adelaide herself. He changed after the wedding, Adelaide said one afternoon as they sat by the Willamette River. Or perhaps he simply stopped pretending. The first time he struck me, he apologized profusely, said it would never happen again. But it did happen again, frequently, and it became worse. Samuel's hands clenched into fists, but his voice remained gentle. How long did it continue? 2 years. I tried to be a better wife, tried to avoid angering him, but nothing I did mattered. Preston enjoyed the control, the fear. He was careful to leave marks where they would not show. In public, we were the perfect couple. In private, I lived in terror. How did you escape? Preston traveled to New York on business. I packed a bag, took what money I could find, and left. I knew he would come after me eventually, but I had to try. Adelaide's voice broke. I had to try to survive. Samuel moved closer, carefully telegraphing his intent before gently taking her hand. His touch was warm, steadying. You were incredibly brave. Many women in your circumstances never find the courage to leave. I do not feel brave. I feel like a coward, running away. Leaving took more courage than staying ever would. You chose life and freedom over false security. That is the opposite of cowardice." Samuel's thumb rubbed gentle circles on her hand. "Adelaide, I want you to hear this clearly. What Preston did to you was wrong. Unforgivably wrong. You deserved better then, and you deserve better now. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness every day for the rest of your life." Adelaide felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I want to believe that." "Then let me help you believe it. Let me show you." Samuel's eyes were steady and sure. "I will prove it to you daily if you give me the chance." Adelaide squeezed his hand, unable to speak but trying to communicate her gratitude and tentative hope. Their courtship deepened through August and into September. Samuel was patient and respectful, always aware of Adelaide's boundaries. He never tried to move faster than she was comfortable with, never made her feel pressured or controlled. When he touched her, it was with explicit permission and tender care. He seemed content simply to be in her presence, to talk and laugh and share the ordinary moments that made up a life. Adelaide felt herself falling in love despite her fears. Samuel was everything Preston had pretended to be and everything Preston could never actually be. He was kind and honest, hardworking and loyal. He treated Adelaide like an equal partner, valued her opinions, and respected her autonomy. The contrast to her marriage was so stark that Adelaide sometimes felt disoriented, unable to fully trust what she was experiencing. One evening in late September, Samuel invited Adelaide to dinner at the ranch. Aunt Millicent had returned to Portland to visit James, so they would be alone except for Samuel's ranch hands who lived in the bunkhouse. Adelaide knew accepting was significant, an acknowledgement of deepening intimacy. She accepted anyway, ready to take the risk. Samuel cooked dinner himself, a simple but delicious meal of steak, potatoes, and vegetables from his garden. They ate at his kitchen table, the domesticity of the scene both foreign and wonderful to Adelaide. Preston had never allowed her in the kitchen, had insisted on formal dining even when they were alone. After dinner, they sat on Samuel's porch and watched the sun set over the valley. The air was cool and crisp with the promise of autumn. Samuel sat beside Adelaide, close but not touching, giving her space to choose contact. "I have been thinking," Samuel said eventually, "about the future." Adelaide's heart began to pound. "What about it?" "I want to marry you, Adelaide." Samuel's voice was steady and sure. "But I know that is complicated given your legal situation. I have been consulting with an attorney in Portland, and there may be options. Oregon Territory's laws are different from those back east. With proper documentation of abuse and abandonment, you might be able to obtain a divorce despite Preston's objections." Adelaide stared at him, hope and fear warring within her. "That could take years, and it would be expensive. I have resources and I am willing to wait, however long it takes." Samuel turned to face her fully. "But I want you to know my intentions are serious. When you are free, I want to marry you. I want to build a life with you here on this ranch. I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to raise children with you and grow old together. Samuel." Adelaide's voice broke with emotion. "You do not have to answer now. I am not pressuring you. I simply wanted you to know where I stand, what I am hoping for." Samuel reached out slowly, giving Adelaide time to refuse, and took her hand. "I love you, Adelaide, not because you are broken or because I want to rescue you. I love you because you are strong and talented and funny and kind. I love the way you focus so completely when you are sewing. I love your careful consideration before you speak. I love how you smile at the horses when you think no one is watching. I love who you are, all of you, and I want to spend my life proving you can trust that love." Adelaide felt something inside her shift and settle. This was real. Samuel's love was real, not manipulation or performance. He saw her completely and loved her anyway. The realization was overwhelming and liberating. "I love you too," she whispered. "I am terrified, but I love you." Samuel's smile was radiant. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "Then we will face the fear together. We will build something better than either of us had before. We will create the life you deserve." They sat together on the porch until full darkness fell, holding hands and talking about possibilities. Samuel described the house they could build, larger than the current structure, with rooms for children and a dedicated sewing room for Adelaide's work. Adelaide shared dreams she had never spoken aloud. A real partnership, a marriage built on respect and love, the freedom to be fully herself. As Samuel drove Adelaide back to town that night, she felt lighter than she had in years. The fear remained, but it no longer controlled her. She had found something worth fighting for, worth risking everything to keep. The attorney in Portland confirmed that Adelaide could potentially obtain a divorce under Oregon territory law. The process would require documentation and testimony, and it would take time, but it was possible. Samuel hired the attorney immediately and began the legal proceedings. Adelaide worried constantly that Preston would discover her location and interfere. Samuel hired a private detective to monitor Preston's activities in Boston, to provide warning if he began searching for Adelaide in earnest. The detective reported that Preston had told Boston society his wife had died tragically during travel, preferring the fiction to the scandal of her flight. This bought them time, though Adelaide knew it could not last forever. Through the autumn, Adelaide and Samuel built their relationship carefully. They spent every possible moment together, learning each other's rhythms and preferences. Samuel introduced Adelaide to ranching life, teaching her about horses and land management. Adelaide taught Samuel about her own passions: literature, sewing, the small beauties that made life rich. They discovered shared interests and learned to navigate differences with respect and compromise. Mrs. Morrison watched the courtship with approval. "I have known Samuel Garrett for years," she told Adelaide one afternoon, "and I have never seen him as happy as he has been these past months. You are good for him." "He is good for me," Adelaide replied, "better than I ever imagined anyone could be." "That is because Samuel Garrett is genuinely good, dear. What you see is what he is, all the way through. No hidden darkness, no pretense, just solid goodness and kindness." Mrs. Morrison smiled knowingly. "You can trust him with your heart, Adelaide. He will guard it carefully." In November, the detective sent an urgent telegram. Preston had begun making inquiries about Adelaide's whereabouts, hiring his own investigators to trace her movements. He had discovered she had traveled west on the Oregon Trail. It was only a matter of time before he tracked her to Oregon City. Samuel read the telegram and immediately began making plans. "We need to be prepared," he said calmly. "I will speak with the sheriff and make him aware of the situation. I will also hire additional men to watch the ranch and the town. Preston will not catch us unprepared. What if he brings legal authorities? He could claim I am his property, that I have stolen from him." Adelaide's voice shook with fear. "Oregon territory has different sensibilities than Boston. Sheriff Daniels is a fair man who will not allow a woman to be dragged away against her will without thorough investigation." Samuel took both of Adelaide's hands in his. "I will not let him take you. I promise you that." Adelaide wanted to believe him, but fear had its claws deep. Preston was wealthy, connected, and absolutely ruthless. He would not give up easily. 2 weeks before Christmas, Preston arrived in Oregon City. Adelaide was working in the sewing shop when he walked through the door. Her hands stilled on the fabric, and her vision narrowed to a tunnel. Preston looked exactly as she remembered. Handsome, impeccably dressed, the picture of refined Boston gentleman. His smile was pleasant and controlled, the same smile he wore in public while terror ruled their home. "Adelaide, my dear, I have been so worried about you." Adelaide could not speak, could not breathe. She was frozen, transported back to every moment of fear and pain. Mrs. Morrison stepped forward immediately, positioning herself between Preston and Adelaide. "Sir, I do not know who you are, but you are disturbing my employee. I must ask you to leave." "I am Preston Whitmore, Adelaide's husband. I have come to bring my poor, confused wife home." Preston's voice was smooth, reasonable. "She has been unwell and left Boston without proper care. I am here to ensure her safe return. Mrs. Garrison is perfectly well and has no desire to go anywhere," Mrs. Morrison said firmly. "Now please leave before I summon the sheriff." "The law is on my side, madam. Adelaide is my wife. She belongs with me." "Adelaide belongs to herself," a new voice said from the doorway. Samuel strode into the shop, his expression colder than Adelaide had ever seen. He moved to stand beside Adelaide, his presence solid and protective. Preston's eyes narrowed as he assessed Samuel. "And who might you be, Samuel Garrett? I am Adelaide's intended, and you are not welcome here." "Her intended?" Preston's laugh was sharp and ugly. "My wife already has a husband. Your intentions are irrelevant. Your marriage is over. Adelaide has filed for divorce on grounds of extreme cruelty. The court in Portland has accepted her petition." Samuel's voice was hard as iron. "You have no claim here." Preston's mask slipped, revealing the cold fury beneath. "The courts will never grant her a divorce. I have done nothing wrong. Adelaide is prone to hysteria and exaggeration. The medical examinations document extensive scarring consistent with repeated abuse," Samuel said, each word precise and cutting. "The testimony from Adelaide and supporting witnesses is compelling. Your wealth and connections mean nothing in Oregon territory." Preston took a step forward, and Samuel moved to intercept him. The two men faced each other, and Adelaide saw Preston recognize something in Samuel that made him reconsider physical confrontation. "This is not over," Preston said coldly. "I will not allow my wife to be stolen by some frontier cowboy. I will return with proper authorities." "You do that," Samuel replied. "Sheriff Daniels is already aware of your presence and your history. He will be very interested in speaking with you about the abuse Adelaide suffered." Preston's eyes flicked to Adelaide, and the hatred in them made her flinch. But Samuel shifted slightly, blocking Preston's view, creating a physical barrier between them. "Leave now," Samuel said quietly, "and do not return." Preston left with a final venomous glare, and Adelaide collapsed into a chair the moment he was gone. Her entire body shook with reaction, years of suppressed terror surfacing all at once. Samuel knelt beside her chair, his hands hovering near but not touching, waiting for permission. "Adelaide, you are safe. I promise you are safe." Adelaide reached for him blindly, and Samuel immediately pulled her into his arms. She clung to him, sobbing against his shoulder while he held her carefully and whispered reassurances. "Mrs. Morrison locked the shop door and stood guard, her expression fierce. "He found me," Adelaide gasped. "Samuel, he found me. And now he knows you are not alone and unprotected. He knows you have legal representation and community support. He knows I will not allow him to hurt you again." Samuel's voice was steady, a lifeline in the chaos. "We prepared for this, Adelaide. We have a plan." Over the following days, Preston made several attempts to assert his supposed rights. He went to the sheriff, who listened politely and then informed him that unless he had documentation proving Adelaide's mental incompetence, she was free to remain in Oregon City of her own volition. He consulted with local attorneys, who were unimpressed by his Boston credentials and unwilling to help him force a woman to return to an abusive marriage. He tried to rally public opinion, but Oregon City's residents had seen Adelaide's kindness and Samuel's courtship. They sided with their own. Preston grew increasingly desperate and angry. He began making threats, hinting at violence. Samuel hired additional men to guard both Adelaide and the ranch. He moved Adelaide into the ranch house under Aunt Millicent's chaperonage, unwilling to leave her unprotected in town. The situation came to a head on a cold January morning. Preston arrived at the ranch with 2 hired men, demanding entrance and threatening legal action. Samuel met them at the property line with Sheriff Daniels and several ranch hands. "Mr. Whitmore, I am giving you one chance to leave Oregon Territory peacefully," Sheriff Daniels said. "You have no legal standing here, and your harassment of Mrs. Garrison constitutes a crime under our laws. That woman is my wife. I have every right to reclaim my property." Preston's control was slipping, revealing the monster beneath. "Mrs. Garrison is not property. She is a person with full rights under Oregon law." Sheriff Daniels' voice hardened. "You will leave immediately, or I will arrest you for trespassing and harassment. You cannot arrest me. I am a respected Boston gentleman. This is Oregon Territory, not Boston. Your reputation means nothing here." Sheriff Daniels gestured to his deputies. "Escort Mr. Whitmore and his companions to the town limits. If they return, arrest them." Preston turned his fury on Samuel. "You think you have won. You have stolen my wife and corrupted her against me. I will see you destroyed for this." "You destroyed yourself through your own actions," Samuel replied calmly. "Adelaide made her choice and it was not you. Accept that and move forward with your life." "I will never accept it. She is mine. She was never yours. She is her own person and she chose freedom." Samuel's voice carried absolute certainty. "Go home, Whitmore. There is nothing for you here." The deputies escorted Preston away, and Adelaide watched from the ranch house window with Aunt Millicent beside her. She felt simultaneously relieved and terrified. Preston was leaving, but she did not believe he would give up so easily. Her instincts proved correct. 3 days later, one of Samuel's ranch hands discovered a fire had been set in the hay barn. They extinguished it quickly, preventing major damage, but the message was clear. Preston was retaliating, attempting to hurt Samuel through property destruction. Sheriff Daniels arrested Preston that afternoon based on testimony from a witness who had seen him near the barn. Preston was held in jail pending trial, and the judge denied bail due to flight risk. Adelaide testified about the abuse she had suffered, and the medical documentation supported her claims. Several Oregon City residents testified to Samuel's good character and Adelaide's fearful state when she first arrived. The trial lasted 3 days. Preston's attorney tried to paint Adelaide as an unstable woman who had abandoned her duties. Adelaide's attorney, a sharp woman named Margaret Chen, who specialized in divorce cases, systematically demolished every argument. She presented physical evidence, medical testimony, and Adelaide's own harrowing account of her marriage. Adelaide sat in the witness box and told her story publicly for the first time. She described the escalating violence, the isolation Preston enforced, the constant fear that defined her existence. She showed the scars that remained, both physical and emotional. She explained why she fled and why she could never return. Samuel sat in the courtroom throughout, his steady presence giving Adelaide courage. When her testimony became too difficult, when tears threatened to overwhelm her, she looked at him and found strength. The judge ruled in Adelaide's favor. He granted the divorce on grounds of extreme cruelty, and issued a permanent order of protection barring Preston from contacting Adelaide. He also found Preston guilty of arson and sentenced him to 2 years in prison. Preston would serve his time in Oregon Territory, far from his Boston connections and influence. Adelaide walked out of the courthouse a free woman. Samuel waited for her on the steps, his eyes shining with pride and love. "It is over," she whispered, barely able to believe it. "It is over," Samuel confirmed. He offered his arm, and Adelaide took it gladly. "You are free, Adelaide, truly free." They married 6 weeks later in early March in the same church where Catherine had wed. The ceremony was simple and beautiful, with Aunt Millicent and Mrs. Morrison standing witness. Adelaide wore a dress she had sewn herself from ivory silk, and Samuel wore his best suit. When they exchanged vows, Adelaide's voice was steady and sure. She was choosing this marriage freely, entering it with full knowledge and consent. The difference from her first wedding was immeasurable. Samuel's vow was brief and heartfelt. "I promise to love you, respect you, and honor your autonomy every day of our lives. I promise to be your partner and your safe harbor. I promise that you will never again know fear in your own home." Adelaide believed him completely. Their wedding night was gentle and patient. Samuel took enormous care to ensure Adelaide felt safe and in control. He asked permission for every touch, every kiss, letting Adelaide set the pace. When they finally came together as husband and wife, it was with mutual tenderness and growing passion. Adelaide discovered that physical intimacy did not have to involve fear or pain. With Samuel, it was an expression of love and trust, a celebration of their bond. Life at the Garrett Ranch settled into a rhythm that filled Adelaide with contentment she had never imagined possible. She converted one of the ranch's rooms into a sewing studio and took on select clients, creating beautiful garments and earning her own income. Samuel insisted she keep her earnings separate, that she maintain financial independence. He consulted her on ranch decisions and valued her input. They were partners in all things, just as he had promised. Adelaide learned to ride horses and discovered she had a talent for training young colts. She and Samuel worked together in the stables, their partnership extending beyond the house into every aspect of life. She helped with foaling season, stayed up nights with laboring mares, and felt the incredible joy of watching new life enter the world. In autumn of their first year of marriage, Adelaide realized she was pregnant. The discovery filled her with complicated emotions. She wanted children with Samuel, but pregnancy made her vulnerable in ways that frightened her. Samuel's response to her revelation was everything she needed. "This is wonderful news if it is what you want," he said carefully. "But you are the one who will carry the child and give birth. If you have any reservations, we can wait. Your well-being comes first always." "I want this baby," Adelaide said, her hand on her still flat stomach. "I want to bring a child into a home filled with love and safety, but I am frightened." "That is understandable. Childbirth is difficult and dangerous." Samuel took her hand gently. "We will hire the best midwife in the territory. I will be with you every step of the way if you want me there. And whatever happens, we face it together." Adelaide's pregnancy progressed smoothly. Samuel was attentive without being overbearing, anticipating her needs while respecting her continued independence. As her body changed, Adelaide found herself marveling at the difference from her first marriage. Preston would have seen her pregnancy as proof of his ownership, would have used it to further restrict her freedom. Samuel saw it as a miracle they were creating together, a new life that would be loved and protected. Aunt Millicent moved to the ranch during Adelaide's final months to help prepare for the birth. Catherine visited frequently, bringing her own infant daughter and sharing advice from her own recent experience. The community of women Adelaide had built in Oregon Territory surrounded her with support and wisdom. Adelaide gave birth to their son on a warm May afternoon in 1854. The labor was long and difficult, but Samuel stayed beside her throughout, holding her hand and offering encouragement. When the midwife finally placed the squalling infant in Adelaide's arms, Adelaide felt emotion overwhelm her. This tiny perfect human was hers and Samuel's, born from love and wanted desperately. "He is beautiful," Samuel whispered, tears streaming down his face as he looked at his son. "Adelaide, you are incredible. Look what you have done." They named him Thomas Samuel Garrett after Samuel's father and himself. The baby had Samuel's dark hair and Adelaide's nose, and he possessed impressive lungs that he used liberally. Adelaide fell completely in love, overwhelmed by the fierce protective instinct that arose the moment she held her son. Motherhood was harder than Adelaide anticipated, but also more rewarding. Thomas was demanding and exhausting, but he was also pure joy. Samuel was an involved father from the beginning, changing diapers and walking the floor with a crying baby without complaint. He insisted Adelaide rest when she needed to, never made her feel inadequate, and shared the work of parenting equally. "You do not have to do everything perfectly," Samuel told her one sleepless night as they took turns soothing Thomas through a bout of colic. "You just have to love him and do your best. That is enough." Adelaide had spent her first marriage trying desperately to be perfect, to avoid punishment through flawless performance. In her second marriage, she was learning that love did not require perfection. Samuel loved her completely, including her flaws and struggles. He modeled patience and grace, and Adelaide slowly learned to extend those qualities to herself. Their family grew over the following years. A daughter, Emily Catherine, arrived 2 years after Thomas. Then another son, William James, arrived 2 years after Emily. Each child was welcomed with joy and raised in an environment of love and security. Adelaide marveled constantly at the difference between the home she was creating and the one she had fled. Her children would never know fear in their own house, would never witness violence between their parents, would grow up understanding that love meant respect and kindness. Samuel's ranch prospered, becoming renowned throughout Oregon Territory for quality horses. Samuel expanded carefully, never overreaching, always ensuring his family's security first. Adelaide's sewing business grew as well, and she trained several young women as apprentices, passing on her skills and providing them with livelihood opportunities. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Samuel and Adelaide sat on their porch watching the sun set over the Willamette Valley. Their children played in the yard, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. The ranch spread before them, prosperous and beautiful, a testament to hard work and partnership. "You remember the day we met?" Samuel asked, his arm around Adelaide's shoulders. "I remember a kind stranger who insisted on helping me carry my trunk," Adelaide replied, leaning into his warmth. "I was so frightened and suspicious. You had every reason to be, but you gave me a chance anyway. You took the risk." Samuel kissed the top of her head gently. "I am grateful every day that you trusted me. You proved yourself worthy of trust, every single day, just as you promised." Adelaide turned to look at her husband, the man who had shown her what love should be. "I could not believe a man could be this kind, but you are, Samuel. You always have been. And you stayed and let me prove it daily," Samuel said softly, echoing the promise he had made so long ago. "You built this life with me. Everything good I have is because you chose to stay." Adelaide thought about the terrified woman who had arrived in Oregon City 12 years earlier, broken and certain she would never feel safe again. She thought about the long journey from fear to trust, from trauma to healing. It had not been easy or quick, but with Samuel's patient love and unwavering support, she had rebuilt herself into someone stronger and happier than she had ever been. "I love you," Adelaide said simply. "Thank you for being exactly who you are. I love you too, always and forever." They sat together as darkness fell, comfortable in the silence, secure in their love. In the distance, young Thomas called to his siblings, organizing some elaborate game that would probably result in muddy clothes and scraped knees. Emily's laughter rang out, bright and unrestrained. William toddled after his older siblings, determined to keep up despite his short legs. This was the life Adelaide had built from the ashes of her past. A life filled with love and laughter, hard work and simple joys. A partnership with a man who valued her as an equal, who respected her completely, who proved his love through daily actions both large and small. Preston had tried to destroy her, but he had failed. Adelaide had survived, had escaped, had built something beautiful in the aftermath. She was no longer defined by what she had endured, but by what she had overcome and created. Samuel stood and offered Adelaide his hand. "Come inside, love. The evening is getting cold." Adelaide took his hand and let him help her up, though she needed no assistance. After all these years, she still loved the gentleness of his touch, the care he always demonstrated. They walked inside together, arm in arm, to put their children to bed and settle into another peaceful evening. Years continued to pass, each one deepening the love and trust between Adelaide and Samuel. Their children grew into kind, confident young people who carried their parents' values forward. Thomas became a skilled horseman and took increasing responsibility in the ranch's operations. Emily discovered a passion for healing and traveled to San Francisco to study nursing. William inherited his mother's artistic talents and pursued a career as an architect. Adelaide's body bore the marks of age and childbearing, but she had never felt more beautiful. Samuel looked at her with the same love and desire he had shown on their wedding day, saw her completely and loved what he saw. The scars from her first marriage had faded, replaced by laugh lines and the evidence of a life well lived. On their 20th anniversary, their children threw them a party that included half of Oregon City. The celebration was boisterous and joyful, filled with friends who had become family. Catherine attended with her own large brood, and James traveled from Portland with his wife and children. Even Henry made the journey from California, where he had built a successful law practice. As Adelaide looked around at the gathered crowd, at the life she and Samuel had built together, she felt overwhelming gratitude. She had traveled so far from the terrified woman fleeing Boston, had transformed herself into someone she could respect and value. Samuel had been her partner in that transformation, but Adelaide knew the work had been hers to do. Samuel had simply provided the safety and love that made change possible. Late in the evening, after most guests had departed, Adelaide found Samuel in the barn checking on a mare who was close to foaling. She stood in the doorway and watched him work, still moved by his gentle competence after all these years. "There you are," Samuel said, noticing her. "I was about to come find you." "I wanted a moment alone with my husband," Adelaide said, moving into the barn, "before our children monopolize you again." Samuel laughed and pulled her close. "They are rather demanding, are they not? I wonder where they learned that." "Certainly not from me," Adelaide teased. "I am all sweetness and compliance." "That is absolutely untrue, and I love it." Samuel kissed her thoroughly. "You have never been compliant, Adelaide Garrett. You are strong and opinionated and absolutely unwilling to be controlled. It is one of the many reasons I adore you." Adelaide rested her head against Samuel's chest, listening to his steady heartbeat. Do you ever think about how things could have been different if I had not gotten on that stagecoach, if you had not been in Oregon City that day? Sometimes. And then I feel grateful beyond measure that the universe brought you to me. Samuel's arms tightened around her. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Adelaide. You and our children, this life we have built. I would not change a single moment, not even the difficult moments. The fear and uncertainty, Adelaide asked. Not even those. They were part of our journey, part of what made us who we are together. Samuel pulled back to look at her face. You taught me that love means supporting someone through their healing, not demanding they heal on your timeline. You taught me that strength comes in many forms. You made me a better man. You were always a good man, Samuel. That was never in question. Perhaps. But loving you made me understand goodness differently, made me see that being kind is not always easy but always worthwhile. Samuel cupped Adelaide's face gently. Thank you for taking the chance on me. Thank you for staying. Adelaide kissed him softly. Thank you for giving me reasons to stay. Thank you for proving every single day that love does not have to hurt. They stood together in the quiet barn, surrounded by the sounds of horses settling for the night. Outside, their children's voices carried on the breeze, laughing and planning. The ranch stretched around them, prosperous and peaceful. Everything Adelaide saw was evidence of love and hard work, of partnership and mutual respect. This was the life she had dreamed of during her darkest moments in Boston, when escape seemed impossible and hope was a luxury she could not afford. She had dared to run, had risked everything for freedom, and she had found something beyond her wildest imagination. She had found true love with a man who understood that love meant daily choosing kindness, respect, and partnership. Samuel Garrett had promised to prove his goodness daily, and he had kept that promise for 20 years. He would keep it for however many years they had remaining. Adelaide knew this with absolute certainty, knew it in her bones and her heart and her soul. She had not believed a man could be this kind, but Samuel had shown her otherwise. He had taken her fear and replaced it with trust. He had taken her trauma and helped her transform it into strength. He had taken her broken heart and loved it until it healed. And Adelaide had stayed, had chosen him daily just as he chose her. Together they had built a love story for the ages, had created a family and a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. Their children would carry forward the lessons of respect and kindness, would build their own lives on the foundation their parents provided. As they walked back to the house hand in hand, Adelaide felt complete peace. She had survived the darkness and found the light. She had endured cruelty and learned what real love looked like. She had been broken and had become whole again, stronger in the broken places. The journey had been long and difficult, but Adelaide would not trade it for anything. Every hardship had led her here, to this moment, to this man, to this beautiful life. She was exactly where she was meant to be. Samuel squeezed her hand gently, and Adelaide squeezed back. No words were necessary. After 20 years together, they communicated in the shorthand of long partnership, understanding each other completely. Inside the house, their children waited, eager to continue the anniversary celebration. Adelaide and Samuel entered together, ready to embrace the next chapter of their life. There would be grandchildren eventually, new generations to love and guide. There would be challenges and changes, the inevitable difficulties that life brought, but they would face everything together as they always had. Because Adelaide had learned the most important lesson of all. Love, when done right, was not about control or possession. It was about partnership and respect, about daily choosing kindness and gentleness, about building something stronger together than either person could create alone. Samuel had shown her this truth, had lived it every day of their marriage, And Adelaide had learned to believe in it, to trust it, to build her life upon it. She could not believe a man could be this kind. But the cowboy had said to stay and let him prove it daily. She had stayed. He had proven it. And together, they had created a love story that would endure through generations, a testament to the transformative power of genuine kindness and unwavering respect. This was their happily ever after, hard-won and deeply cherished. And it was more beautiful than any fairy tale Adelaide had ever read.